historically, when somebody got their Social Security back in the day, they'd only live 6, 7, 8 years on Social Security. And it really wasn't designed to be this pension, if you will, for 20, 30 years of your life. All right, everyone, welcome back to the Fears or the 10 Fears of Retirement podcast and book series. So when we talk 10 fears of retirement, one of the most common fears that I'm talking about with families in the community across the nation is, hey, Alex, what's going to happen with Social Security? Now, keep in mind, if you're following along in the book, this is actually going to be chapter 5, but fear number 4. So when we talk about Social Security, it's going to be eliminated. Alex, I'm going to lose my benefit. That's a real fear. Number 2, we're going to talk about ways to optimize Social Security and some best practices. Now, keep this in mind. Social Security historically makes up 60% of a family's income in retirement. So arguably, it's one of the most important decisions you make when it comes to your retirement plan, right? Getting back to that income plan we talked about a couple episodes ago. So let's talk about Social Security. So number 1, let's hit the, hey, I'm going to lose my Social Security. The government, is going to take it away or change it. Let's dive into that, and let's dive into some of the things being discussed. So keep this in mind. This is my CYA, if you will. I do not have any part of Congress. I do not have any part of the Social Security Administration. Me as a financial advisor and a financial professional, I obviously research these things. I talk to people who are in that realm and those departments, but this is what we call educated guess and an educated conversation around what could happen and what we're seeing. So number 1, I'm going to give you some data and some statistics first. It's 1935. Social Security is created under FDR, who's the president at the time. He says, hey, we're not going to tax Social Security, and he held his promise. And the first time that got broken, and the first person or the first time period that actually did start getting taxed, hence Social Security, was in the mid-'80s, okay? So he held his promise on not taxing it, but then that changed in the 80s. And then Clinton increased the tax rates of Social Security in the 90s. So we've kind of had this long run of what Social Security looked like, but let's kind of go back to that 1935 concept. Back in 1935, people aren't living as long as they do today, right? So historically, when somebody got their Social Security back in the day, they'd only live 6, 7, 8 years on Social Security, and it really wasn't designed to be this pension, if you will, or deferred annuity for 20, 30 years of your life. I mean, I have a client who's been on Social Security for 28 years. It was not designed to be that when it was originally created. So we know mathematically, just with that piece, there has to be changes. Now, let me add a couple other layers to that. That's important for you to understand what's going on with the OASDI trust fund. That is the trust fund that funds our Social Security. People be like, Alex, I hear they're taking loans against it. They have. But keep in mind, at this moment in time, we're currently in 2024. There's over $3 trillion in that account, and it will continue to grow until roughly, now this number has changed 2 or 3 times in the last 5 years. Full transparency. I do not like when numbers change that often on Social Security, investments, income planning, inflation, whatever it is. You don't like to see it changes that often, but let's just go through it. It's going to be 2033, 2034. That's where it's projected right now. And what's going to happen is we're going to go into a deficit. And let's walk through that. It's going to be about 0.76 to 1 ratio. So about give or take 0.25% of a deficit every single year from that point on. Why is that taking place? Well, let's go back in time. It's 1960. We have 5 people working and 1 person taking out Social Security. That's a healthy number. A lot of people are paying into the pot. Fast forward, it's 2007. And now that ratio cuts down to 3.5 people working to 1 taking it out. Still healthy. 2020, good old COVID year. It drops to 2 to 1. In a personal and a professional experience, I never had so many families retire in 1 year than in 2020. Why? I think we all know. I had a lot of police, a lot of social workers, nurses, healthcare professionals say, I'm done, right? I'm not playing this game anymore. So that was the year it went 2-1, and that's a big deal. So now the year is going to be 2033, 2034, and we're going to drop to 0.74, 0.76. It's kind of moving in that range to 1 deficit. So we basically, we have 10 more years for the pot to keep growing, and then it's going to fall off. Why is that year of that 2033, 2034 so relevant? Well, it's relevant because the last baby boomers turn 70. And when they turn 70, we all know what happens. You're forced to take your Social Security benefit. So we're going to have the baby boomers, our largest working class, the biggest distribution of wealth in American history, and the IRS knows this, the Social Security Department knows this, and now all of a sudden we're going to have a deficit. Why? We don't have enough young people getting to work to fill the ranks of the baby boomers retiring. That's the root of this issue. So now let's talk about, what could happen to your benefits? This is my personal / professional opinion. I really don't see any real changes taking place with folks who are in that baby boomer generation. I think the biggest change is going to take place with the younger generations. Myself, I'm 40 years old right now. This is kind of a guess, but I think it's an educated guess. I think they'll do something like this. I think this will be the first change. I'll kind of go through the top 3 changes I see coming. The first change would be, Alex, you were born in 1984. So anyone who is born in 1980 or later, you now can't start your benefit at 62. Your early benefit would start at age 67 or age 70, right? So they push back that early or beginning of that ability to claim and or what your full retirement age is, which they've already done once, right? Originally, your full retirement age when you got 100% of your benefit was age 65. Then they pushed it to 66 and 66 in some months, and now 67, all based on the year you were born. So they've already done that a couple times and really one major time. But my point being with this is I think the first thing they'll do is they'll move it back for younger generations. So a really important factor you want to know when you claim your Social Security, as soon as you hit age 52, as long as the current laws are in place, as soon as you turn 52, there's a piece of legislation, Joint Resolution 32, I believe it was in the 90s, that says, you are protected, that as soon as you turn 52, your benefit is grandfathered in. So if you're listening or watching me today and you're 52 years old, congratulations. You have legislation that supports and protects your guaranteed benefit, aka your Social Security benefit, okay? And basically that rule is saying, when you're nearing retirement, and when they say nearing retirement, that means within 10 years of claiming, aka 62 is when you can start. So that's where I come up with that 52 age. Okay. Now let's keep moving down the pike here. So that's the first thing I think will happen. They'll say, younger generation, you can't take it. And then that buys them more time to figure it out because good, bad, and different, whether we're Republicans, Democrats, Green Party, whatever we are, both sides and all sides of the fence like to kick the can down the road is a trend that I've identified in my 40 years of life when it comes to politics. So that's the first thing I think will change. I think that's the highest probability of change because, again, it'll buy time and it's a pretty quick fix for a short term. The second thing that's being discussed that I don't want to say I think is a high probability, but it's shown its face in other areas of government. And this is probably the one that scares me the most. If you're familiar with the term means testing, what does that mean? If you've done any FAFSA applications, your kids are getting ready to go to college or your kids are in college, you know exactly what I'm talking about. You go to get a student loan and then all of a sudden FAFSA sends you this sheet. We need you to tell us all about how much money you make, what your assets are, basically your whole financial picture. Why are they doing that? Do you need the student loan as much as this person may need the student loan? And then if your parents are too wealthy or have too much money, they say, sorry, you can't get the grants. You're not going to get this loan. You can only get that loan, et cetera, et cetera. So that's what we call means testing, is basically looking at people's financial situation and saying, who needs it more, this person or this person? The reason that scares me is if that type of system gets dropped into Social Security, that would be a big deal. That would be a big deal. Do I know exactly what that looks like? No, I do not. But I know, again, it's already showed its face on the student loan and student aid process through FAFSA, direct loans. And that's something we need to watch close. So means testing is something that's been discussed. Has it happened? No. Do I know for a fact it's going to happen? No. But that's probably the one that scares me the most. The third one I would throw up that I think is probable is when we get into your earnings history and what those thresholds are. So what basically happens when you're putting money into Social Security, they change this number every year. It was 128, then it was 134. I believe right now it's closer to 138,000 a year. So you make 138,000 a year, and don't quote me on that. That's the rough number of it. But you make $138,000 a year. Every dollar you make after that, you're no longer putting into your Social Security benefit. We call it that tax or that contribution. So you make 138 grand, you're no longer paying in to your Social Security benefit. So it gets maxed out at that number. So what they're talking about, and I'm not saying it's right or wrong, but it actually is a pretty smart solve if you look at it this way. Let's just say, and I'm going to make this up off the top of my head. This isn't anything that's been, discussed at Congress to my knowledge. But hey, I'm going to take every single American who makes between 1 and 20 million a year, right? Infinite, whatever the number is. Let's just say they draw it at $1 million. If you make over $1 million, you fall into this category. We're actually going to take, hey, you get credited on your first 138 grand, but then from 138 to your first $1 million, we're going to continue to take that same Social Security percentage or contribution, if you will, or tax, if you will. But we're going to take that remainder from the 138 to the $1 million, and we're going to put that in the pot for everybody, lower income, middle income, whatever it is. That would actually be one of the quickest solves from the math I've seen. And again, I'm not saying it's right or wrong, but that is also something that's being discussed. And that's that whole earnings threshold, your earnings contribution, you get cut off, but hey, if they continued it up to the first $1 million for anybody who makes over X dollars, that would actually be a mathematical way to solve this issue, okay? The last thing I'm going to talk about is the thing that's, I think, common sense, but I'm just going to say it. So I'm going to talk about this more in this podcast, but I'm just going to plant a seed right now. Taxes are going to be going up in America. Why do I say that? 2 reasons. Number one, our national debt. Our national debt is the main driving economic force of why our taxes are going to go up in America. Well, what's the second point that'd be important to know? Here's the second point. We're in the second lowest tax brackets of history right now. Whether we like them or not, Trump put a tax law in that's going to sunset in 2025. And so basically, we're in the second lowest tax brackets, 2024, 2025, and then it's going to go away. Because of the national debt, because I know we're in the second lowest tax brackets of history, odds are, and economics tell us, taxes will go up. So that's going to be something that absolutely comes into the Social Security conversation. As we increase taxes, there's a strong probability that some of those taxes will be increased for this issue. Okay, so those are kind of the 4 main reasons we see it going up. I don't believe, and again, this is personal, professional, I don't believe it's ever going to be one of those things where it's, hey, all of a sudden, nope, we're going to take 80% of your Social Security. I don't see that happening for the baby boomers. And again, this podcast, this book, my profession is geared towards retirees. That's 95% of the population I serve. So the retirees, I don't think have an issue. If you're basically, let's say you're 45 today or younger, you probably will have an issue. Your Social Security benefit will probably change. So you need to have planning around that. There's a lot of different things you can do. I'm not really going to get into that in this chapter, but that is really where the crux of the issue lies. Hey, you're under 45, you're under 46. I don't know exactly what the age is, but somewhere in there would be a good educated guess where I'd put a line in the sand. I really believe it's going to be like, hey, if you're born after 1980, it looks different. Okay. So just kind of have that game plan. So again, if you're listening to this and you're retired or you're close to retirement, you probably don't have the issue, but your kids and your grandkids will. So it's important to bring up if that's something that you discuss in your family. So let's kind of talk about one other thing right now. Every year the elections come around. So we're in 2024. There's going to be an election. I would say from a personal standpoint, it's probably one of the most unique elections just because we have so much drama built up around it, right? Hey, who's going to be the presidents that run? Does Trump end up being the one who supports the Republican Party? There's so much turmoil, so much, just conspiracies and everything else around it. It's a different year. Historically, the market is good in an election year. But what's going to also happen, and I talk about this and I joke around about this every year, soon as hey, this is the candidate on this side, this is the candidate on this side, and then we got, Kennedy Jr. coming in the game, right? They're all going to start putting ads, talking trash about each other, discouraging you to try to vote for the other side. Fine. We all know that's coming. But what they always do is they'll have some ads that are centered around Social Security and trying to create fear, which is unfortunately what a lot of time the media and the politicians are doing. So they're going to say, hey, Trump's going to try to take your Social Security. Hey, Biden's going to try to take your Social Security. Listen, it's not something you just stroke a pen and can take somebody's Social Security. It doesn't work that simply, okay? So understand the fear tactics. Don't let it get into you. Don't let it worry you. This is a process that's going to take time. There's a lot of things being discussed. We know there has to be changes, but I really, really, really passionately feel, based on the data, I don't believe it's going to be anybody who, let's just say, is 50 years older today in 2024 or older. Okay, so that's my 2 cents. That's my professional opinion. And again, do I work with the Social Security Administration? No, this is based on just the research and data we've looked at and I've looked at. So let's talk about Social Security and how to maximize it now. Keep this in mind, everybody. If this is one of those topics that really is on your heart, and again, any one of these podcasts or chapters you may read or hear, watch, please reach out to us. That's what I'm here for. I do this stuff all day, every day. I love it. I'm passionate about it. So if you're like, hey, Alex, when does it make sense for me to pull my Social Security out? Reach out to me. I'll go through a whole planning session with you. Good news, I got a great team around me, and I do this because I love it. But that is a mathematical answer I can give you, and I can sprinkle on my opinion based on all the experience I have in this subject. So just feel free. That's always available. So let's kind of talk about how we maximize Social Security. Number one, when it comes to Social Security, there's some rules that I've never seen in an article, a white paper, or how to maximize your Social Security. I'm a financial planner. Everybody who talks to me, Alex, you're a financial planner. You're going to tell me to wait till 70. Max it out. I get the most at 70. I get the least at 62. You're just a financial planner and say, hey, take it to 70. No, I won't. Oftentimes I say the opposite, believe it or not. Why? When we talk about Social Security, we're talking about the game of risk. And I don't necessarily have an opinion and an approach that aligns with all financial advisors. There's advisors I work with here under the umbrella of Foguth Financial Group that don't necessarily agree with what I'm going to say, but math doesn't lie. Math doesn't lie. And so I'm happy to have those conversations with anybody because historically, when I'm saying something, I'm backing it with math, data, and economics, okay? So first thing is this. When it comes to Social Security claiming, you have to understand your risk. Your risks are going to be different than any other person you talk to. There's always the water cooler guy at work who knows everything, right? He's always 50% up every year. He knows everything about everything. He doesn't talk about the losses like the gamblers, right? But he also is like, I'm taking my money at 62. I'm getting it. I don't trust the government. I'm taking out at 62. That might be the right thing for that person. The number one factor we have to consider, and I think this is common sense, is our longevity and our health, right? I'll use me and my wife as an example. My wife, all of her grandparents have lived into their 90s, historically very healthy folks. She's very, very healthy, got a good demeanor. She's probably going to outlast me. Why do I say that? Well, historically, women outlast man, right? And again, there's always the asterisk to that. But you have to look at the family. Can you change your DNA? Can you, if I'm working out, mental health, blah, 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 of course you can. But we're talking about a big, big decision and arguably one of the biggest decisions you're going to make in your retirement process. When do you start your Social Security? So the first thing you have to consider is how healthy are you, right? How long have your siblings lived? How long has your parents lived? Have you had any big health scares, right? So for me, my dad passed away early. My grandparents, I think the oldest grandparent I had through my bloodline was like 85, 86. Two of my grandparents, one passed away in the early 60s, one passed away in the late 60s. So I don't have the greatest longevity, and I run pretty hard, right? I'm pretty intense. Blood pressure is always rocking and rolling. So I don't think I'm going to live to 90, 95. So when I do my income planning, when I look at my Social Security numbers, I consider myself, hey, if I make it to 85, I'm thrilled. Okay. My wife doesn't like that, but that's what I do. My wife, on the other hand, I have her live to 100. Why? I talked about this in income planning. What's one of the biggest risks we face? Living too long. So I have myself go at 85. I have her go at 100. That will impact how we do our Social Security, right? Why? There's always a break-even point. I know this is common sense, but I'm just going to walk you through it. Hey, if I start at 62, and I'm just going to make this up, and I'm getting $20,000 a year, okay, let's just use that, and I wait till 70, all right? I take that 7 years, 8 years of not getting that money, and now I have $160,000, not even including COLA or cost of living adjustment, aka the inflation to Social Security. I have 160 grand I got to make up. So if I don't take it at 62 and I take it at 70, you figure out what that number is, extrapolate that over the years you're not getting that money, and then with the difference you get at age 70 or 67 or whatever you're doing, what's your break-even point to make that money up? That's one of the first things you want to figure out. And for the record, if you have a good income plan, you don't need to do all this. It's done for you. And again, that's one of the things that I provide to people. It's math. It's an easy answer. You just got to have the right tools, right? So that's the first thing to say. The second thing, and again, this is something I don't really see often when we talk about Social Security. What's your net worth? What is your net worth? I have clients who have 200 grand, and it actually makes sense for them to start drawing earlier. So let's say they retire at 65. I might tell that person who has a $200,000 net worth, hey, we're going to draw on your IRA and your 401k for the next 5 years, and we're going to delay you to 70 because the math tells me that their Social Security benefit actually has more power, has more worth in their plan than their assets. Now let's play the other side of that fence. You got $2 million. So if you get an 8% raise, which is what you get every year you wait on your Social Security, you're getting an 8% raise. Now you actually get a raise every single month. So just understand that. So, hey, if it's 8%, divide it by 12, that's what you're getting a raise every single month, okay? But let's just say we have this person with $2 million, and let's say they're only getting 4% on their investments. Very conservative. I'm not shooting for the moon here. They're getting 4%. So they're making 80 grand a year by letting their investments just compound, okay? There is an equation. There is a formula for this. Again, these are the things I do in my office. But if you're doing this on your own, you're figuring this thing out, God bless you. But what you need to consider is, okay, if I have $2 million and I'm getting $80,000 a year at 4%, or I'm getting 8% of $2,000, which number do you care more about? Well, the $2,080,000. That number dwarfs your 8% raise. So in that scenario, I might have a conversation with the client. Hey, it actually makes sense for you to turn the Social Security on now, and let's let our investments compound because the investments hold the worth, that they have the power in the plan. Okay. So there's 1,000 variables on that one piece right there, right? Hey, are you doing tax planning? Are we doing Roth conversions? What type of money is it that they have invested? Is IRA, is it Roth, is it non-qualified? But that's a really simple way to look at it. And usually that threshold, and again, I'm going to kind of generalize, and I hate doing that. Usually when a family hits somewhere between 600,000 and 700,000, based on how much monthly income they have and spend, that's a huge piece. How much money are you spending a month? But usually that's 600 to 700K of net worth liquid assets. I'm not talking about your house. I'm talking about liquid assets, invested, bank, stocks, bonds, mutual funds, annuities, etc. That threshold tends to be a line where I may tell somebody to take the Social Security benefit rather than drawing on their investments. And here's an easy way to say it. Would you rather spend your money or would you rather spend Uncle Sam's? Right? So we preserve your money, your legacy money, your life savings, and we turn on the Social Security benefit. That oftentimes is a good strategy for somebody who has a higher net worth. So again, net worth matters. Your health matters. Your family history matters. These things all are very, very relevant to when you do it. I actually just had a meeting last night before recording this where I was having this exact conversation with one of my higher net worth families, and I was showing them the math because, again, the beauty is it's math. So understand when it comes to maximizing your Social Security, there's a lot of variables. One other important variable, do you like your job? And how much money do you make? Hey, I'm making 150,000. I work remote. I love my job. It's easy work. Well, hey, listen, you probably want to delay it again, considering those other factors, specifically your health and risk, because you don't need the money. So let it compound, let it grow, right? If you don't need it. So you got to consider your working situation. If you like it, if you're not, are you blue collar, white collar? Is your body breaking down? Are you in a good place? There's 1,000 elements to run through there. And then, when I think about Social Security, one of the other things I always talk about, and I'm not going to go deep into this. I don't touch really deep into it in the book because it's probably the most complicated piece. Think about this. Social Security. There are 500 plus, so over 500 ways to claim your Social Security benefit. Over 500. There are over 2,300 rules to claiming those 500 plus options. Social Security is complicated, right? It's very, very complicated. And that's why I always encourage families, whether it's a referral, whether it's somebody I'm just talking to who's a personal friend or somebody who I'm a current client, I'm like, listen, we need to exercise all of our options. We need to understand what's in our best interest, not just considering our Social Security benefit, but considering, do we have a pension? What are our investments? What's our monthly income need? All these things should be working together to give you that answer, okay? All of these things should be working together to give you an answer. It's not a siloed decision. Full transparency. That's why a lot of financial planners don't talk about Social Security. Less than 1% of financial planners in the United States are even certified and licensed to help you claim your Social Security, because the way it's really viewed internally, and this is, again, just me kind of, pulling the curtain back here, I don't make any money by telling somebody how to claim their Social Security. I don't make any money doing it. So a lot of people don't want to touch it because it's purely a liability. Now, my biased opinion, right, full transparency, is if I'm going to be a retirement expert and I'm going to help people make decisions on their entire retirement plan, investments, taxes, Social Security, income, everything, legacy, estate, life insurance, the whole comprehensive view, I should probably be an expert in the element that usually makes up around 60% of somebody's income in retirement. That's kind of the national average, give or take. So it's important we understand that. One other thing to talk about before I kind of wrap up the Social Security, because I could probably talk 2 hours on this one, is, when you claim it early, you got to know the rules. And what I mean by that, you're 62 and you're still working, and the guy at the water cooler, I'm turning my Social Security on at 62 and I'm going to go buy a boat. I'm going to pay off the mortgage. I'm going to do X, Y, Z. I'm going to save it. I'm going to speed up my savings the last 3 years I work. You have to understand the earnings restrictions if you claim before your full retirement age, okay? So if you're making $70,000 a year, you turn 62. Now, this number changes every year. So I always hate giving these numbers in the podcast and the book because they're going to change. But you're 62 years old, you're making $70,000 a year, you turn on your Social Security. Within a couple months, you won't even have a benefit. Why is that? Well, because for every dollar you earn above roughly, and again, this number changes. It was 22,000, then it was 23, now it's 24 and some change. But basically, let's just say, hey, 23, 24 grand as a rough number in your head. As soon as you're making over $24,000 in a year, for every dollar over that, you're going to have, for every $2 over that, $1 is going to be taken away from your Social Security benefit. So they start taking away your monthly benefit every single month for how much money you make over that. So the problem is people will have this grand idea of like, hey, I'm going to pay off debt. I'm going to, invest this money. But really quick, you make too much money and then your entire monthly benefit's gone because you made too much money. So you got to understand those earnings restrictions. Look that up if that's you. Spend some time at looking at that. The other one is when you hit your full retirement age year, they're a little bit more lenient. It's closer to like $55,000, $56,000 a year, and it's a 3-to-1 ratio, not a 2-to-1 ratio, so it's not as bad. So just understand those rules. Once you hit full retirement age, you can make as much money as you want, and it does not affect your Social Security pertaining to that rule. It's still going to be taxed, right? Social Security is still taxable. And then that'll be the last point. I'll wrap this up. When it comes to the taxability of Social Security, if you're a single person and you make, $24,000 a year, you go from zero taxes on your Social Security to 50% of the number being taxable. If you're a married couple, that first tier is $32,000 a year. Again, they can change this stuff, so you have to monitor it when it comes up to your year to pull, or when you're really looking at this. So you're married, $32,000. As soon as you hit that modified adjusted gross income, that's the number you care about. If you don't know what that is, go into old Dr. Google, type in modified adjusted gross income, and it'll tell you what falls into that. Earned income, pensions, capital gains, et cetera, et cetera. So you hit 32 grand, you go from zero of your Social Security being taxable to 50% of the benefit being taxable income, okay? The magic number is 32,000 for single, 44,000 for a married couple. That's when you go from 50% of your Social Security benefit being taxable to 85% of your Social Security being taxable. So you have to understand these thresholds. Like everything we talk about in this book, like everything I'm going to talk about on this podcast, there's certain thresholds that become real life to you, and you just got to know about them to help avoid those obstacles, to help avoid those fears and concerns that you're going to have. And by watching this, by spending the time, I commend you, because you spend 30 minutes understanding something, and it's probably going to help you tenfold over your life. And again, when it comes to Social Security, this is arguably one of the most important decisions you're going to make. So again, I'd encourage you, reach out. I have a no cost, no obligation process I put people through. If you're somebody who has a plan and a financial advisor, I'm happy to look at it and give you a second opinion. If you're somebody who doesn't have a plan at all, I'm going to highly encourage you to, because the one thing when I was kind of talking about in the beginning of this whole podcast and this series and what got me into this business, watching my grandfather run out of money, if he had an income plan and if he had somebody like myself sit down and go through the process I went through, he wouldn't have ran out of money. He would have known it was coming 7, 8, 10 years in advance. So, there's a power in this education. And a simple way I say it is you spend 2 hours of your life getting into the details and letting somebody who's a professional who honestly, and again, everybody's got there. If you got somebody you trust, great. I just know where I come from and my passion for this. And so I'm always going to shoot people straight and say, hey, spend 2 hours with me and I can answer every question you'll ever need. Okay. And now you're walking into this educated and you have a good grasp. Social Security is complicated. Like I said, there's a ton of rules, a ton of ways to do it. It's not just turn 62, hit it, or turn 70 and hit it, right? It's a little bit more than that. Even though from the surface it looks like that, just like Medicare, right? I'm not going to get into Medicare, but make sure you feel good about the decision. Make sure you've turned over the stone, verified it works with your investments, your monthly needs, your long-term goals, and your rate of return requirements. Make sure all these things are talking to each other, okay? So hopefully you're enjoying the podcast. Make sure you join us next time. If you're not following us on social media, please do so. Check us out. Come follow me. We got Foguth Financial. If you look up Foguth Financial Group and look up our social media channels, we have tons of education we're putting out on our social media every single week, borderline every single day. So whatever we can do to help, but please, if you haven't done so yet, please reach out to us and set up that time. And I promise you that 2 hours we spend together will be the best 2 hours you spend for your retirement journey. So God bless you. I hope you appreciate it. If you have questions, do not hesitate to reach out, shoot me an email, give us a call. We're here to support you. And again, we'll see you next time, and we'll see you in the next episode.